Hello everyone, welcome back. It's always exciting to share another orchid journey with you. Today, we're working on an orchid that has clearly been through a lot. As you can see, the leaves are completely dried out, brittle to the touch, and some of them are curling at the edges. Their color may still show patches of green here and there, but most of the surface is already turned yellowish and papery, showing that the plant hasn't been getting the water and nutrients it needs for a long time. The roots peeking through the old potting mix also look shriveled and lumpy, another sign of stress. At first glance, you might think this orchid has no chance left, but the truth is, orchids are tough survivors, even when the leaves are in such bad condition, and that's exactly what we're going to save today, and push out fresh growth. So let's roll up our sleeves and get started. We're going to start by carefully removing the orchid from its old pot. And oh dear! As soon as we take a closer look, it's clear that most of the roots have already dried out or completely died off. The substrate it's been sitting in isn't in much better shape. It looks compacted, old, and unable to provide any proper drainage or nutrients. This is one of the main reasons the plant has been struggling. The very first step we need to take is to immediately remove all of this old substrate. Gently loosen it from around the roots, breaking it apart piece by piece until every bit of the decayed material is cleared away. Next, we'll move on to trimming. Grab a clean pair of scissors or pruning shears. Make sure they're sterilized with rubbing alcohol beforehand to prevent spreading any hidden bacteria or fungus. Now, carefully go through the roots one by one. You'll notice that many of them are completely dried, hollow, or shriveled. Some may even feel papery or collapse when you press them lightly. These roots are no longer able to carry water or nutrients, so we need to trim them away. Cut them off neatly, working slowly and gently, so you don't damage any healthy tissue in the process. What we want to keep are the firm, plump roots, those that still show signs of being greenish or whitish when moistened. Even if only a few remain, they're the lifeline that can support new growth in the future. Now that the trimming is done, we're going to clean the plant thoroughly. Using a gentle spray of clean water, carefully rinse over the roots and base of the plant. This step helps wash away any lingering dust, decayed substrate, or fungal spores that might still be clinging to the surface. Make sure the spray is soft, not too strong, so you don't damage the delicate roots that remain. Pay extra attention to the crevices where dirt and residue often hide. By giving the plant a proper rinse, we're leaving it fresh, hydrated, and ready to absorb the natural treatments we'll be preparing next. After you finish rinsing, grab yourself a large clean container. Now, carefully place the orchid inside, but here's the important part. You only want the stem and above to come in contact with the water and fill it with fresh water. Make sure the roots remain exposed to the air. This technique allows the upper portion of the plant to slowly absorb moisture and regain strength, while the roots stay aerated and avoid the risk of rot. We're going to let it sit for 30 minutes. After about 30 minutes, Carefully lift the orchid out of the container and gently shake off any excess water. Then, take a clean handkerchief, soft rag, or even a tissue and lightly pat the plant dry. Be gentle, especially around the stem and crown, since they can be sensitive when wet. The goal here isn't to dry it completely, but to remove the extra moisture that could invite fungal growth or bacteria if left sitting. Now, let's move on to preparing the fertilizer. First, grab yourself a clean cup or container and pour in about 1,000 milliliters of fresh, clean water. Next, add in 1 teaspoon of yeast. After that, add in 1 teaspoon of honey. Honey works as both a gentle antibacterial agent and a natural source of simple sugars, giving the orchid an easy supply of energy to kickstart its growth. Once both ingredients are in the container, use a clean spoon or stir stick to mix them thoroughly until the yeast and honey are completely dissolved. You'll notice the water becoming slightly cloudy. That's perfectly normal and shows that the yeast is starting to activate. After you've finished mixing the solution, carefully pour it into the same container we used earlier to submerge the orchid. This time, however, we're going to use a bit more of the mixture, enough so that the entire orchid, not just the roots, is fully submerged in the solution. By doing this, every part of the plant, from the stem to the leaves, can absorb the nutrients and natural compounds we've prepared. Once the orchid is comfortably submerged, let it rest in the solution for about 25 minutes. During this time, the yeast and honey will work together to stimulate the plant cells, while also coating the roots and leaves with a protective layer that supports growth and guards against harmful bacteria. After 25 minutes have passed, carefully lift the orchid out of the solution, making sure to support the base so that none of the leaves or roots get damaged in the process. You'll notice that the plant looks refreshed, with the leaves and roots glistening slightly from the nutrients it has absorbed. Now, take a clean handkerchief or soft rag and gently pat the plant dry. Avoid rubbing too hard, as orchids have delicate leaves that can bruise easily. Focus on soaking up the excess moisture from between the leaves and around the crown, since leaving water sitting there for too long could encourage rot. Think of this step as giving the orchid a gentle polish, cleaning away any leftover solution while letting the absorbed nutrients continue their work inside the plant. Now let's prepare a new home for our orchid. Start by choosing a pot with clear drainage holes at the bottom. This is important because orchids don't like sitting in excess water, and proper drainage will keep the roots healthy. Begin by slowly filling the pot with pine bark until it reaches about halfway up. The bark should be chunky and airy, giving the roots plenty of space to breathe while still holding enough moisture to support growth. Once you've got that base layer in place, carefully position the orchid right in the center of the pot, making sure the roots are spread out evenly instead of bunching together. Next, we're going to add a small but very useful tool, a steel base. Think of it like a supportive pole that the orchid can lean against as it grows stronger. Gently press the steel base into the pine bark, securing it firmly so it won't shift around. Then, position the orchid so it rests comfortably against the support. Once it's steady, continue filling in the pot with more pine bark, layering it around the roots and base of the plant. Be sure to press down lightly as you go, so the orchid sits securely but still has plenty of airflow around the roots. Then we're going to finish it off by adding a top layer of moss. Gently spread the moss across the surface of the pine bark, making sure it covers evenly without pressing it down too firmly. The moss works like a natural blanket, It helps lock in just the right amount of moisture while still letting air flow through to the roots. This layer also protects the orchid's base from drying out too quickly, especially in warmer or windier environments. Over time, you'll notice the moss itself staying fresh and slightly damp, which provides a steady source of humidity around the plant. Just remember not to overpack it, since orchids thrive best with that balance of air and moisture. Now, we're going to put the remaining solution to good use. Carefully pour it around the pot, letting it soak into the pine bark so the roots can begin absorbing those nutrients right away. Take your time with this step. Let the solution spread evenly through the pot instead of dumping it all at once. That way the bark can absorb it gradually. Afterward, transfer some of the solution into a spray bottle and give the orchid a light misting. Focus on the leaves and the surrounding air. This not only refreshes the plant, but also raises the humidity level around it, creating a more natural environment that orchids love. The combination of watering at the base and misting on top ensures the orchid gets both hydration and nutrients in a balanced way. After 28 days, the transformation in our orchid is nothing short of remarkable. If you look closely, you'll notice the leaves that once appeared limp and lifeless are now firming up, holding themselves more upright and showing a healthy green sheen. This is a clear sign that the roots have begun to re-establish their strength, drawing in nutrients and moisture from the bark and moss we carefully prepared earlier. At the base of the plant, you may even see new root tips emerging, tiny, pale green or silvery nubs that indicate active growth. These roots are incredibly important because they're not just anchors holding the orchid in place. They're also the lifelines through which water and nutrients flow. If your orchid shows this sign, you can be confident it's on the path to stability. The moss layer on top should feel slightly damp to the touch, not soaked, which tells us the moisture cycle is working properly. If it ever feels too wet, loosen it gently with your fingers to encourage airflow. Remember, orchids thrive on balance. Too much water suffocates them, while too little leaves them dehydrated. Now let's talk about the routine moving forward. Every week, you'll want to check the bark and moss with your finger. If it feels dry, water the orchid using clean water or a mild homemade fertilizer solution, just enough to rehydrate the medium. Avoid a strict schedule like every 3 days. Instead, let the plant tell you when it needs water. Mist the leaves lightly 2 or 3 times a week, preferably in the morning so they have time to dry by evening. This keeps the humidity up without encouraging rot. While misting, take a moment to wipe down the leaves with a clean cloth once in a while to remove dust and help the plant breathe better. And here's a final tip. Rotate the orchid slightly every few days. This ensures all sides of the plant get equal light, preventing it from leaning toward one direction. Place it in a spot with bright, indirect light, away from harsh midday sun, and keep it in an area with good airflow. By sticking with this routine, you'll create a rhythm the orchid can thrive on, and with each passing week, you'll see it continue to reward you with stronger roots, firmer leaves, and eventually, the promise of new blooms. And there you have it. After 1 month of steady care, this orchid is showing a real turnaround. The leaves that were once limp and fragile are holding themselves upright again. They feel firmer to the touch, and the green has deepened, which tells us the plant is photosynthesizing and storing energy more effectively. Down at the base, new root tips are pushing out, tiny silvery green nubs that mean the root system is rebuilding and beginning to anchor itself in the potting mix. The moss is doing its job too, keeping the surface humidity steady while the pine bark below stays airy, so the roots get moisture without being waterlogged. You may also notice subtle swelling at node points along the stem, a hopeful sign that the plant is allocating energy toward future growth, whether that becomes a new spike or even a keiki later on. All of these signs together show that the orchid isn't just surviving, it's getting stronger and preparing for the next phase of growth. Keep up the routine we've used. Mist lightly a few times a week, water only when the medium feels dry, give it bright indirect light, and feed lightly with your homemade solution every couple of weeks. With patience and consistent care, those small improvements will add up to a full comeback. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, share it with other orchid lovers, and subscribe so you won't miss the next update on this journey. Until then, take care, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next one.